Does your outside world look like this? Do you step outside your front door ready for adventure, ready to seize the day, and then...
What's happening?
The stick machine today, okay?
What? So
Horrible. Worst experience I ever had.
really bad.
My God.
bad.
I fought a war for this.
You fought a war?
World War II. That's right.
Attaboy, thank you for your service.
Okay, my pleasure.
What is going on, Frank?
Perhaps you tire of the mundane day-after-day grind of driving 15 minutes on moron-infested city streets or highways to work a boring and lifeless job for 8 hours before returning to those same streets only to get into a car accident because some Hillbilly Hills goblin doesn't look both ways at a one-way stop? Sorry, that one's personal. Are you just ready for the Matrix?
This will feel a little weird.
Well, the search is over when you log into your choice of fabulous virtual worlds. Sandy beaches, check. Lush forests, check. Rustic villages with handsy locals, check. Horseback riding across scenic grasslands, check. Camping in the woods with your best friends, check. Or sprawling metropolises with a host of unique and colorful inhabitants, check. Open worlds. Your new life awaits. There's a moment, typically at the start of your journey, but oftentimes sprinkled throughout the experience, where you reach the top of a hill, emerge from a forgotten crypt, or pass through a tree line, and what lay before your eyes is everything the world has to offer. I call these moments showcase vistas. I'm sure there's a better name, perhaps even an official name for whatever these are, but I've settled on showcase vistas. One of the most iconic of these is the opening of The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This is particularly noteworthy in Breath of the Wild's case because many consider this the first open-world Zelda game. Nintendo, in this short 20-second segment, show you the world you're going to get to explore, and while the scale and vastness of the valley before you are impressive, particularly for a Nintendo title, what interests me in these moments are the points of interest that are carefully placed in this vista to draw your attention to them. In this case, a castle and a volcano. I want to go explore both of those features, and visually seeing the distance between Link and them creates a sense of openness, where the possibility for adventure can be found behind every tree or over every rolling hill. At the start of a game, this is an effective hook. A well-designed showcase vista can subconsciously guide the player to where the story would like them to go, with just a few interesting features on the horizon. Take Skyrim, for example. Upon exiting the Helgen Cave, Alduin flies overhead and off into the distance on the right side of the screen. Also, to the right and on a mountain on the horizon is Bleak Falls Barrow. The NPC you side with then follows up these visual cues with a suggestion to meet them in Riverwood, which you will also find to be to the right from the cave exit, down in the valley below. The game is pulling you in that direction. That is where the main quest continues, and Bleak Falls Barrow is one of your first dungeon delving experiences after visiting Riverwood. Now, you can ignore these cues and upon reaching the Guardian Stones, continue right on to the left. Skyrim also sets up a little vista at these stones with a tall mountain in the background shrouded by mist, and a lake in the foreground. It wants you to believe that the land of Skyrim is vast, that there is something to do in every direction, and there certainly is. However, take notice that in this vista, there is a distinct lack of points of interest. The game wants you to go to the right, wants you to go to Riverwood, because that's where the story continues. You can explore at your own free will, but through clever visual cues, dialogue, and animation sequences, you are guided to the right rather than the left, and to the beginning of your adventure. This isn't just an effective hook at the beginning of a game, though. Showcase vistas are an impactful way to continue building upon a player's experience several hours in. If we look at a more recent title, Elden Ring, it uses these vistas to great effect in multiple places throughout the game. I'd like to highlight two of these, as they are the most striking and obvious examples. The first is upon exiting the starting crypt and as you approach the first step Site of Grace. Immediately, you can see Stormveil Castle, the Limgrave Tower Bridge, the Erd Tree, and the Tree Sentinel.
It's time.
The latter being a particularly effective POI placed as a harsh reminder that you are indeed playing a From Software title.
Bro, again, bitch. I'm ready for you. All right, this is possible. Let's go. Let's go. I don't care about deaths.
While this showcase vista certainly hooked me into exploring Limgrave, it pales in comparison to the second one. You see, this vista and the sights you behold are deceptive. Stormveil Castle, the bridge, and the Erd Tree are all landmarks you're going to want to explore. And while the Erd Tree is a brilliant and illuminating feature, drawing your attention like moths to a flame, the other two serve as a curtain, concealing an even larger and grander open world behind them. Once you've defeated Godric and have made your way through to the backside of the castle, you are met with, in my opinion, one of the most breathtaking views in video game history. This is our second, and arguably best, showcase vista in Elden Ring. Perched in the middle of Liurnia of the Lakes is the Raya Lucaria Academy. To its left on a cliff, the Cathedral of Mana Celis. To its right and jutting out from the sea, the Divine Tower of Liurnia. There are other striking POIs, but ultimately these are not important. We see the breadth of the world before us, realize Limgrave was small in comparison, and our sense of exploration is renewed. In almost every showcase vista I visited in my research for this video, the game sets the player up on a precipice, with points of interest appearing in the distance on a precipice or ledge of their own. In this way, everything is visible within a valley. In Fallout 76, the top of the world is visible upon exiting the vault, along with Mount Blair and New River Gorge Bridge. From your place on the mezzanine, you can peer down into the Appalachian Valley below you. So you have your perch, the enticing landmarks that draw in your attention, and a seemingly vast distance between you and those features. Of course, I want to go explore those cool points of interest I see on the horizon. But what about all that lies between? The greatest vista in video gaming loses all its wonder if the world feels lifeless and empty. In a no-clip interview on the creation of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, the developers comment that every 30 seconds, a player should come across something while exploring the world, whether a pack of deer, NPCs wandering about, or even bandit camps and other minor points of interest. And while this is an ambitious goal to aim for, not every game has the development time, budget, or vision to make their world as full as The Witcher 3. I first started The Witcher 3 in the early months of 2019 after a friend gifted me the game so we could talk about it while he played through it. I knew very little about the world, about the characters. I didn't even know it was based on a book series. I started as any interested party might by watching a few spoiler-free YouTube videos to learn more about the world I was getting ready to explore. You see, I have this weird quirk where before I dive into a single-player game, especially one that has been out a while, I need to learn about the world, watch hype-laden content creators express their joy and excitement towards the characters, story, or simply the open world. All of this before I start my own journey. This little ritual appropriately hypes me up for what's in store. And so I took to YouTube, watched videos praising the quests, narratives, character development, and above all else, the open world and maps of Velen, Skellige, and Novigrad. When it came time for me to experience the game for myself, I knew I was in for one hell of a ride. After the opening cinematic, the infamous bathtub scene, the sparring tutorial, and then finally fighting off a pack of ghouls in White Orchard, Vesemir and Geralt took to their horses for a short ride into town. This is where the beauty of the game's environment is set on full display. And yes, there are plenty of showcase vistas naturally built throughout the entire experience. But what The Witcher 3 does likely better than any other game with an open world is fill in the gap. Quests, enemy encounters, treasure, points of interest with lore books or other world-building devices, NPCs with dialogue trees, hidden caves, unique monsters, crafting materials. Gwent.
What would you say to a few rounds of Gwent?
There is always something to be doing in The Witcher, and almost all of it feels natural and interesting. It took me from February of 2019 to January of 2020 to complete The Witcher 3, that is, go through the entire main storyline, most of the Witcher contracts, and disappoint both Yen and Triss, although they definitely got the last laugh.
You just got exactly what you deserve.
It didn't take me this long because I'm bad at the combat or a slow gamer. It took me this long because the world was so filled with interesting distractions and diversions that I couldn't help but check behind every rock, over every hill, or get lost in every foreboding forest or swamp. Velen nails the harsh and depressing countryside, with villages ransacked by monsters, men, or a combination of the two. Novigrad feels alive as peasants shamble about, taverns fill with patrons, and the docks and their workers labor on even late into the evening. Skellige comes across as untamed and wild, with only the hardiest of individuals able to scratch out a life on the rocky cliffs or within the windy valleys. And while the base game is certainly not lacking in things to do or see, neither are the two expansions, Heart of Stone and Blood and Wine. Heart of Stone makes great use of existing locations on the mainland, further filling in an already saturated and rich open world. Blood and Wine adds an entirely new area in Toussaint, equally full of showcase vistas, exciting quests, and memorable characters. As you can see from this clip, despite having completed a great deal of The Witcher 3, around 140 hours of playtime, all these question marks are things to discover, some minor, some major, but all of them a natural part of this well-crafted world. Some might suggest that it's easy for a single-player game to fill in the space between their points of interest, and that it's rather difficult for a multiplayer game or an MMO to do the same. After all, MMOs have players at various progression states, all milling around the same zones doing a variety of activities from crafting to combat to questing, whereas single-player RPGs can guide players through carefully crafted segments of the world like we discussed with Skyrim. Some MMOs do fall flat in their open world, their maps meticulously crafted for beauty and ambience only to feel lifeless and empty of importance. Others have stood the test of time with open worlds full of odd jobs here and there, and lively cities filled with zany inhabitants that, well, this kinda sums it up. But there's one game that has sat on the throne the longest. A game I mistakenly thought was just another go here and kill X bandits, or retrieve X amount of jars of honey, or harvest 10 trillion pumpkins for 20 XP. A game with an open world, just as rich as Elden Ring or The Witcher 3. A game I never experienced until now. As I've gotten older, I've noticed a shift in why I play games. I explored some of this in my Why I Left ESO for Guild Wars 2 video, but there's an aspect that I've yet to touch on. For me, gaming has transitioned into a social experience rather than a solitary focused one, like, say, reading a book. I still love single-player games and try to play all the major single-player releases. But as anyone with a family and kids knows, Free time outside of the home is rare, and the ability to connect with friends over video games has never been easier. And when you factor in travel time, food and gas expenses, entry fees, and all manner of other costs associated with going on adventures in the real world, it's easy to see why MMOs are a nice and convenient alternative. Now, I'm not suggesting that you never leave your parents' basement. Yes, you do need to touch grass like Paul Tassi. What I'm suggesting here is that MMOs, especially ones with stellar open worlds full of activities, they're a good way to connect with others. Now, I know what you're thinking. Really, Conniff? World of Warcraft? Didn't you say in a previous video you didn't have time for gear grind, meta chasing, endgame rinse and repeat content? Weren't you just playing Guild Wars 2? Yes, I did, and yes, I was, or am. And that's why in this section of the video, I'm going to be taking a look at both World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, because they approach their open worlds differently, yet both deserve to be celebrated for the way they've done so. Both Guild Wars 2 and World of Warcraft work showcase vistas into exploration well. In the case of Guild Wars 2, they turn them into an actual point of interest that you can view for some experience and zone completion. In WoW, these vistas are sometimes cutscenes, but more often than not, baked into how you traverse a zone. As you come up the North Road in Tiragarde Sound heading into Stormsong Valley, you reach a bridge with a view overlooking the valley below. This was a wow moment for me. The beauty of the Italian-like countryside with Brennadam nestled in the center is a perfect example of why I never tire of games like these. A sprawling countryside or a thick and untamed jungle, two very different atmospheres, offer the possibility of meaningful interactions alone or with friends. In one, you might be helping farmer Ida pick apples for her pies, or maybe helping out around the farm for Milton Book. In the jungle, you may be escorting a packed doctor to a forward encampment, only to rescue fallen Vigil soldiers along the way. In Guild Wars 2, nearly every encounter is doable in a party and with friends. From hero points to heart quests, the game has been designed to complete the open world with the cooperation of other players. As you explore vistas or hunt down the last remaining mastery point you need, you can enjoy Tyria and its unique culture, and each player can get something useful out of it. I am continuously impressed by the approach ArenaNet has taken in the design of its game. They have married map exploration with character progression in a way I haven't seen before. Those hero points I mentioned, necessary for different skills and abilities you will need for whatever build you're aiming for. Mastery points? This game's version of ESO's champion points, an after-leveling system that provides unique benefits to your account no matter the character you play on. These 2 points of interest specifically tie into the world they are found in. Hero points are typically a combat challenge with some sort of champion or hero-level NPC that fits the area surrounding them contextually. Mastery points, at least the ones obtainable in the Overland and the expansion zones, are primarily click to unlock points, like vistas. Many of these are perched on high-up ledges or tucked away in caves, only accessible by mastering an element of that expansion. Exploring the open world, completing events, many of which are event chains that continue some minor storyline, and fighting world bosses, all of these things provide you with XP to continue leveling your character or working on your masteries. The footage you are watching now is from Dragon's Stand, an entire zone dedicated to a meta event in which upwards of 100 players all coordinate to take down the mouth of Mordremoth. The entire zone is a twisting labyrinth of vines, foliage, caves, and crevices, all accumulating in a final assault on the Elder Dragon. When we turn our attention to World of Warcraft, there is a notable difference. The map doesn't have you seek out cool vistas or specific points of interest to get skill points or mastery points. What then makes exploring Azeroth exciting? What have they filled the gap with? Those who have played WoW know very well just how unique the quests you come across in the world can be. This is what surprised me the most. Having never played WoW except for 2 whole weeks in 2009, I had the misconception that questing in WoW was nothing more than generic fetch quests, kill quests, or pick up an item and move it somewhere else quests. Boy was I wrong. From flying around on a parrot, pooping on nasty pirates, to saving a cat from a burning building, to taking selfies with nature, to collecting balloons for some little girl in Stormwind, only to watch her disappear into the sky. I have been stunned by the variety and number of quests found all over Azeroth. It's in these quests found all across the game and through every zone that adventure exists throughout all the corners of World of Warcraft's ever-expanding world. One recent quest stands out to me. On the waking shores in the newest Dragonflight expansion, underneath the terrace of the Ruby Life Pools, are two orcs named Duraz and Kolgar. Being new to WoW, I wasn't aware of the context surrounding Duraz and Kolgar's visit to the Dragon Isles. I know nothing about the relationship between orcs and dragons, except for what I learned through the dialogue between these two old friends. Their history, their sorrow, and the deep and unrelenting regret for the horrors Duraz played a part in are all laid bare in this quest through only a handful of lines. But it's impactful. I have no connection to much of World of Warcraft's past, yet I feel like I could imagine these characters and their lives, and how those lives have impacted the world around them. This is why I love open-world games. The impact of characters that game devs have poured their hearts and souls into breathe life into the world. When a game is devoid of other characters and you are left abandoned and alone, the environment must do double the work in order to make exploring, or simply existing, fun and meaningful. When Fallout 76 released, the game had very little friendly NPCs, none in fact, save for a robot raider at the top of the world. But to Bethesda's credit, they did fill the world full of story entries strewn about in terminals, loaded onto holotapes, or through robot interactions across the Appalachian wasteland. Each of these devices gives the player a glimpse into what the world was like before the bombs fell, which in turn gives character to the small towns and other points of interest all across the map. A perfect open-world video game does both of these things well. It fills its world with unique characters that have a lasting impression on the player, and it also fills the space with world-building devices like readable magazines, holotapes, computer entries, and all other manner of storytelling tidbits. These are the things that make a plain old small town a creepy and unnerving location to explore, or perhaps a dark and twisting forest into a haven with tons of benevolent history. This is why both Azeroth and Tyria are the cream of the crop in my opinion when it comes to MMO open worlds. I love the sense of adventure I get climbing over the Shiver Peak Mountains, or the sense of wonder I have peering down into Stormsong Valley, getting lost at sea level in New Kainang City, or carefully creeping through Fallhaven. I'm left fully immersed in the world around my character. And while not every part of an open world is explorable, many buildings or points of interest locked and simply there to fill space, the design of the outside world and the facade of these fake buildings is enough for me to suspend disbelief and lose myself in the roleplay that the game asks me to participate in. When you then can take this experience, this immersion, and include your friends in your adventure, mwah. I love many different types of games, not just open-world RPGs. I play a healthy amount of Magic the Gathering, Legends of Runeterra, and racing games like Formula 1.
Are you okay?
No, Jeff, I'm not okay. I was right there along with many of you in Fortnite as it took the world by storm in 2018. I've played entirely too much Shoot House. There's so much variety to be had playing video games, it's hard to imagine a world without them. In the case of open-world games, experiencing fantasy lands only conceivable by the human mind has never been easier. We've got a plethora of options in every fantasy or sci-fi genre imaginable. You want an open-world space sandbox game? Give Star Citizen a try. You want an open world in your tactical strategic shooter? Give Hell Let Loose a go. Open-world Halo? Yeah, it's a thing. Perhaps riding a motorcycle around a cyberpunk dystopian megalopolis is your jam. Cyberpunk 2077 is there for you. There's a place for everybody. These games promise exploration, a sense of adventure, and immersion unlike anything we've seen in decades previous. Not all of them deliver on this promise, of course, but the ones that do provide an enriching experience and remind us why video gaming has become such a popular medium of entertainment. So, whether it's Tyria, Azeroth, Tamriel, Eorzea, or Runeterra sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, I look forward to seeing you there. Just two adventurers exploring the open world and all it has to offer.